Hey KD, how are you? Good seeing you and hearing you again.
It's good to be here. Thanks, DB.
Awesome. Welcome everyone. We are back with another episode of One on One. Today's topic: the LGBTQ community in the veteran space, and some of the amazing work that KD is doing, highlighting the awareness conversations and some of the amazing things that are happening that I think need more attention, more conversation. So I appreciate you showing up and kind of being here with us and holding some space and talking a little bit about your journey. So to kind of start off, for everyone that sees this, you'll see on the bottom we have a scrolling ticker. Comment your branch of service, the years that you served, so that we can go ahead and comment with you and have a conversation in the comments as well, wherever you see this, whether on Facebook or YouTube or any other place. We want to have this as a dialogue. That being said, Katie, tell us a little bit about yourself. What branch of service? What did you serve? Time frame and all that stuff, and tell us a little bit about your journey within this community.
Well, I started off in 2001. I enlisted in the Army in May of 2001. Actually, March of 2001, but I was delayed until May. And then I did basic training out in Oklahoma, the second to last gender integrated class out there on Fort Sill. And then I came home to Fort Jackson, relaxing Jackson as they call it, and
Mm-hmm.
then I was stationed at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, which was basically my backyard because I grew up outside of Charlotte, North Carolina, um, all 4 years. And I got out basically because I was in a training accident and hurt my back. And I decided, instead of being sent overseas, kind of broken, that sort of thing, that I would let, a nice, healthy E1, E4 take my place instead. And that's where I did my time, and I was in as a 71 Lima, which turned into a 42 Lima, which is human resources. So, taking care of leave, taking care of finances, that sort of thing. I took care of that for you.
Awesome. Yeah, that's basically what we don't want to negate when you're in service. You want to make sure that your leave gets processed. You make sure your paperwork gets good. Those admin actions for promotions and all the stuff that comes with that. So like you don't mess with supply, you don't mess with the cooks, and you don't mess with admin because you want to get paid
Right.
on time. You want to get your stuff right. You have to make sure you do all those things correctly. Um,
Yeah.
so tell me a little bit about so after service. So there's a few interesting things I think is good to unpack, as you all will learn. So KD has obviously served, but she also in the mental health space has had a journey that she's dealt with as well, to include also in the LGBTQ community, which is amazing being able to highlight that you literally are standing up and being able to kind of trailblaze, as we'll see in your group that you run on Facebook, on many different fronts. Talk to me a little bit about the mental health side of the house.
Well, mental health side of the house, I got out in 2005, and I was given a rating of 10% for general anxiety. Um, and it was mostly done under the sleep disturbances because I did have trouble sleeping while I was in the service. And so they chalked it up to general anxiety. And then I left, the military world, became a veteran, got out and, you know, worked various jobs, and went to college as well on the GI Bill. Um, and then I was working, and I never finished college up until 2017 is when I went back. So from 2009 until 2016, I just was working, retail jobs, that sort of thing. And then in 2014, uh, I was told that my father um, was diagnosed with melanoma, which is skin cancer. And in 2015, I started to exhibit symptoms of paranoia and slight delusions, thinking that my car had been stolen when I just misplaced where I parked, basically. Um, and so nobody, it kind of happened slowly. I It was more like a one-off. Every 6 months or so something strange would happen, and people would laugh about it, and then I'd go back to normal. and and then in 2016, one of my brothers died of a massive stroke at the age of 38. um,
Oh
and
wow.
in 2015, my father passed away from stage 4 melanoma. So, and within 7 months of each other, both of them passed. At the time, I was working two jobs, basically 60 to 70 hours a week. I decided not to renew my lease with the roommate that I was living with, and I was not prepared for my brother to die. And so after he died, um, I just was sort of lost. I took a month off um, to recover, to grieve for him, and that affected my finances greatly, to the point that I was um, living out of my car for a summer of 2016. All of that combined created the perfect storm of mental health issue that I went to the VA for eventually. And after 12 days, they diagnosed me with schizophrenia. I was having paranoia, I was having delusions, um, and those are the two positive things that positive symptoms that you can have for schizophrenia. I was also having a lot of the negative symptoms of schizophrenia as well: disorganized thinking, um, racing thoughts, that sort of thing. And so that's how my mental health issue came about. I did not know that I had this uh, biological vulnerability until 2016 when I was 36. It may have shown up as early as age 30 in 2010, but again, nobody caught it. I didn't know. I didn't catch it. And of course, the therapist that I was seeing at the VA did not catch it because it was just so. They call it the prodromal stage, and so it was just very in the back of everything that I was doing, and so it was very invisible, I would say, hidden, and to this day it still affects me, even though I am well medicated, and I do talk therapy. I still have the symptoms of schizophrenia, at least what they call negative symptoms, things that take away from your personality, like disorganized thinking and racing thoughts, that sort of thing. And you can often tell when speaking, because it takes away from you, as well as it's taking away memory and that sort of thing. So I just wanted to be upfront that if I sound like I'm talking in a circle, it's usually because of the schizophrenia. So yeah, just to let you know.
No,
Thank you.
and I appreciate that, Katie, because I think it's good for, well, one, I want to commend you just for sharing and wanting to speak about your conditions, because again, many folks would not speak up on things or try to put a face or name to things, and I commend you, one, standing up, being able to kind of we always talk about breaking the stigma behind mental health, but there's more than just anxiety or PTSD and things like that. So specifically, to schizophrenia, right? And how that lay dormant for a while until it began to exhibit more, prominent symptoms with you, and also what you dealt with the family, and just everything, like a perfect storm almost of things that you had to kind of endure, right? As a veteran, right, going to get help and all these different things. I just wanted to just express that, we've talked before, but I think it's just empowering to be able to have a conversation, to show that you're still here, right? You're working through, you're
Mm-hmm.
doing some amazing things. And sadly, for someone who doesn't know, right? Because I'm sure, even you had to kind of, look it up and like, wait a minute, what is this thing? Like, we all
Mm-hmm.
know, but it's from a distance, right? There's more awareness of PTSD or anxiety or depression, but folks are not very versed in some of the other lesser known or seen or explained conditions, like schizophrenia. So being able to even have this conversation, I think it's empowering to many who themselves may be dealing with this and may feel like, well, I'm not part of the PTSD wagon right now, right? Because, hey, I got
Mm-hmm.
PTSD and so does the other one. So you kind of find strength in numbers. And with the other conditions that are not as prominent, I can imagine how alone someone can feel, and feeling like, KD, you don't get it. I'm the one dealing with this. And it's like, hey, I'm right there with you, right? KD stepping up saying, hey, I'm with you. So I just wanted to commend that for you very quickly. Can you talk to me a little bit about, kind of segue, because there's two amazing things that you have going on for you. One being your mental health condition, but you're also active in the LGBT community. Talk to me a little bit about that, because as a veteran, that's a whole nother, lane that doesn't get a lot of attention and people don't talk about as well.
Yes, yes. So about that, you know, I'm sorry. If you could just repeat that again, I
Sure,
apologize.
no worries. So we've kind of touched a little bit on the schizophrenia side of the house. Now towards the LGBTQ side, being a veteran, identifying the way you do. Can you talk a little bit about that journey and some of the work that you're doing in the community? Because I think that's another area that's very underrepresented as well. Both, in service, many of us kind of served during the don't ask, don't tell time of the period. Fast forward to now, even as veterans, many folks just kind of, don't talk about things, right? They may not make
Mm-hmm.
it a point to speak about it. And what I think is missing in our community is inclusiveness, conversation, safe conversation, where we're not ostracizing each other, but we're able to empower and understand that, hey, KD is my battle buddy, right? We
Mm-hmm.
served. And just because you have this mental health condition today, that doesn't mean anything to me. I respect it, I
Mm-hmm.
understand it, and I want to support you. But the same thing with your preference of how you choose to identify and show up, I think it shows a level of conversation that's needed, right? We're doing great work for those suffering with PTSD and other conditions. I have a service dog. We're bringing that conversation to the light. But we have to talk about the LGBTQ community as well, and what our veterans are dealing with, because, as you know, we have so many veterans that had to serve, many of them a full career, never speaking about the reality, never truly being themselves. And that identity of who am I and how do I embrace the world and how does the world see me and perceive me, for many, it was hidden away. And I think today we have the ability to begin to have conversations, right? Not to diminish the past, but to at least create a better today, more awareness, and move forward. So, talk to me a little bit about that, some of the work that you're doing on that side, and it kind of enlightened us. Where do you stand when it comes to your identity, and again, being empowering to others that are watching this as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So, how I identify is, if you'll see the flags behind me, is one, I identify as gay, um, homosexual, if you prefer that term, or as the young kids are saying nowadays, the queer community. I also identify as non-binary. What that means is, I see myself as male and female. Male and female being the two ends of the spectrum of the gender spectrum. There's also the identity of a gender, which is outside of the gender spectrum. And so I identify as non-binary, meaning I see myself as male and female. But there are, various degrees on the spectrum. Some people, feel that they're neither male or female. They may feel, 20, 30 or percent, one way and 70, 80 the other way. And so, uh, uh, how I identify is on those two sides, the non-binary and the LGBT,
Mm-hmm.
LGBT, the gay community, or the queer community. And what I do now is that I work with different people within the queer community that's also military veterans. Um, and what we do is we sort of socialize and network here in Durham, North Carolina, is where it got started in 2017, after my first episode. Um, and basically, what we do is we try to help each other navigate how the VA system works for LGBTQ community. A lot of veterans don't realize that it's okay to come out of the closet with the VA. That since the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell in 2011, 2012, that it's okay, no matter when you serve, that if you're identifying as part of the community, then the VA has services for you. You could have voice training. You could have hormone replacement treatment. You could have even prosthetics. Short of surgery, the VA is there to help you transition to whether you're trans or you're non-binary, or if you wanting to come out as anything less than cisgender and heterosexual, the VA is there for you. And that's what we try to do, is bring awareness to that piece of the VA.
And thank you for that, because I think again that goes down to the education piece, which I think is lacking in so many ways. Right down to definition for many that don't know, right? LGBTQ. Some folks might say, okay, what does that mean? Lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and then now we have also the addition of plus, which then kind of opens up for the conversation of identity, of how you want pronouns to be used and so forth. So it's an ever growing community. It's an ever expanding conversation of truly being able to look at that. So I want to just kind of go back very quickly, because I know some may have never seen some of the other flags. Like people know the rainbow flag, for example, but the other one there is the expanded part. There we have the yellow, the white, the purple, and the black as well. Talk to me a little bit more if you can, so because most folks understand, okay, you may be gay, or you may be straight or bisexual or identify as you do, but also now coming to a point of how you identify, that's something that's a little more newer for some individuals who may not know that, where it's like, wait a second, so you're gay, but you also identify as, right? Where now I think we have more language, right, to express that. To your point,
Mm-hmm.
how you talked about the spectrum, I think it's a new concept for many, which is good to talk about because it helps better people understand. Because I know many now have seen, like I've seen on LinkedIn and many places where folks will put in parentheses their preferred pronouns, right? His,
Right.
him, her, she, or a combination thereof. So I appreciate you even talking about the spectrum, because it helps put in context where someone may identify or may be, because like you said, a percentage could be here, a percentage could be there, and as you're kind of exploring your own worldview and where you're at, it's better to explain that versus before, without that language, right, without those pronouns,
Mm-hmm.
without that understanding of the spectrum, it's just, people would say you're either this or that, and there's more than just a category of this or that, where it's not that simple. But I wanted to ask you if you have anything else to elaborate on the identification piece, and how that has helped you in your journey. Because I know for many others out there, you know how it is. They may not talk about that stuff. They may not even know that that's a new aspect of the community, of how do you want to present yourself, and it's happening on professional platforms. And I mentioned LinkedIn because LinkedIn by far, right, it's the highest form of a professional site, and the fact that you have folks literally saying, you know, date DP here, right? This is my picture, my resume. This is who I am, and I'm identifying parentheses. I'm using these pronouns. For many, it's like, what's the why do you have pronouns? again, it's awareness and bringing a conversation. What would you add or share more to that for those that are completely new and may not know, or say, I didn't even know that. I was tracking, right, on LGBTQ, but now the plus side, adding all of the identification periods pieces, I think it's great to even just introduce for many who may not know.
Right, right. Absolutely. Well, one of the things that brought about, this is because it became known that there are people out there that are intersex, and what that means is, they are presented as male or female, physically, but chromosomally they have the XXY gene, or they have XYY, or any number of those combinations. And so, once we became aware of that, um, with the onset of DNA and everything like that, um, you know, that's where they started. The intersex community started to come out and say, we're here, and we deserve a place at the table as well. And so I think people started to realize that there are more than just two genders out there. There's a whole, like I said, spectrum of genders. And so, one of the ways that I start off is, I say, hey, I'm KD, and I prefer, they them pronouns. And that opens up the discussion to, say, this is who I am and how I identify. um and I apologize, I have a goldfish memory now.
No, no, no,
um
no, no. I'm
but
with you. So, and that's why, for those that are watching, because me and Candy have spoke before, and we've actually, I forgot to mention it. So most of these shows we've been doing, I've always shared that the panels that I have with me, we've met on Clubhouse. And KD and I also met on Clubhouse, literally being able to
mhm,
hold space there in the veteran network. And as soon as KD kind of spoke up and shared her story, I said, "You got to start hosting some rooms in here. We have a platform, and we need you to be able to start having these conversations because it's needed, right? We need to have that." I'm sure. I guess a question I'll ask you in relation to the gender piece, many, I'm sure, I would assume, so I'm asking, would challenge, right, what your position may be. KD, what do you
mhm,
mean? You're confused. That's not a thing, right? Because again, if we were to remove the conversation and move it to a different place, for example, I'm of Spanish descent, Dominican, but I also understand that there's African American in my heritage. That being said and done, I embrace my culture and I identify as being Spanish, understanding that there are Afro American roots in there. So now there's a conversation of Latinx, Afro, Latino, and so forth, and all these different things. And I choose to embrace the world and accept that, which is not something that people may see, but that's not something that will be challenged. I'm saying, DP, what do you mean? No, you can't, identify as having African American
right,
roots. Like, you wouldn't challenge that, right? It'd be like, hey, okay, that's, I respect where you're coming from. And if you're, one part Turkey Indian, then represent that too. So when it comes down to this conversation, to me, as someone that tries to embrace the world and accept everyone, I see no difference. If you are presenting yourself to me and this is what your reality is, I accept that, right? Because I think sometimes what is lacking is you would accept someone's nationality, but when someone is identifying as what they are and what they're dealing with and who they are embracing the world as now, to the point of the identity piece, that adds now another layer of thinking that it requires us to elevate the conversation, which goes back to the point where I'm sure some people may not know how to even have this conversation, right? And
right,
some of it may come across as ignorance of KD. I just think you're confused. Pick a side. You're either gay or you're straight or you're a lesbian, whatever. What is all the other stuff,
mhm,
right? You were born this way. That's what it is, and all the other things that I'm sure that you've had to deal with in some shape, fashion, or form. And the reason we're having this conversation is because Katie is here and able to stand, right? She's not perfect and not super strong. She has her down days, but someone watching this doesn't have the ability to take that blow. And you may not want to come out. You may not want to have a conversation. You may bite your tongue. And from a mental health perspective, right? Because remember, there's two pieces here. It's your identity of who you are when you add into that schizophrenia, major depressive disorder, PTSD, and so forth. My service dog agrees, as you heard. um, that exacerbates that because now you're dealing with something you're putting away, and when you're dealing with mental health, the last thing you want to do is add more pressure to things needlessly. So you may have folks out there, veterans out there, who may not have the tools to speak up, right? Like, hey, D, you don't understand. How am I supposed to deal with someone who comes at me with ignorance? I don't have the faculty. So I preface all that to say, what would you say, KD, to someone out there right now who may literally say, KD, I feel exactly the same way you feel. Literally everything KD said, me. But I can't deal with someone saying to me, you know, Jim, no, or Janet, no, right? Or
Mhm.
whatever. So what would you say to someone after all these years of you kind of, dealing with things as far as advice or, information for them as they begin to embrace the world and potentially for the first time usher those words?
Mhm. I would say, first of all, DM me, send me a private message, and let's sit down and talk. Secondly, I would find somebody local that you can speak to. As far as like your how you identify and how you feel. Um, you know, you know, whether you're still in the closet, you're 1 foot out, or whatever. Um, and don't be afraid to go to the VA and tell them, this is what I'm feeling. This is how I identify. They may have, um, a provider that doesn't necessarily agree with you. But the beauty of the VA is that you can always go to a different provider. If that one's not working for you.
And KD, that's a great point that I want to kind of pause on real quick because I was going to get to it here in a second, but you said it again, and I think it's a great point to focus on, which is the healthcare aspect, the mental health care aspect at the VA. If you go to your therapist, you go to your provider, and you're only giving them 70% of what you're dealing with, but you've reclused away that 30%, which is tied into your preference, your identity, you're not going to
Hmm.
be able to get the tools and resources to deal with things. So, and again, this conversation is scripted this way because it's not going to just be a, well, KD, what do I do? I'm like, KD's point is simply being, hey, reach out, because it's not just a cookie cutter answer. Well, KD, how do I deal with PTSD? It's a process. You live with this, right? You find ways and therapies and modalities to be able to work through the things that you have. No different in this side of the house, where if you are in therapy and you are dealing with mental health conditions, or you have been ostracized, or you have dealt with trauma, whether or not related to, whatever it may have come, whether it be combat trauma, military sexual assault trauma, fill in the blank, whatever it may be, being open to say that. I appreciated you opening that door to say you can come out to your therapist if you are ready to, because that's also going to be another layer of support, even in your therapy journey, which goes back to Katie's point of saying don't go at this alone, right? Your therapist, whoever you're seeing, can't work with you in your journey unless they know, unless they are aware of what you are dealing with. And to Katie's point, you can request someone else. One of the biggest things I've always said is you have to take ownership of your healthcare and your mental health care. And if that provider you're seeing isn't cutting it and you don't feel comfortable, you have the ability to fire them and get another one. You don't have to just deal with whoever is assigned to you. There's not sick call in the military or, triage where you just go and get some Motrin, drink some water, change your socks, and get out. No, this is a whole different conversation. This is the veteran space. And to Katie's point, the VA has different programs in place that many would have not known. All the things that you shared from the healthcare perspective. But again, being open and being aware of what's available, I think is huge. Katie, you mentioned one point specifically about some of the things that you do. I wanted to do a quick jump over here to one of the groups that you run on Facebook, Military Veteran Trailblazers, MVT. You can search for the group. This is what it looks like. You can request to join. Katie runs the group here, and the information that it has here is pretty amazing. I'll say here, for example, we're a group of LGBTQ military veterans based out of Durham, North Carolina. We meet every third Saturday for social networking and get-togethers. All variations of discharge and military generations are welcome. You can bring your significant other into the space as well. Talk to me a little bit about someone out there who may say, okay, maybe I may look into, MVT. What would you like us to know about MVT?
Well, basically, it's um, an arm of the social wellness groups out of the VA. It started off being that way. However, now it's become a social network all of its own. Um, I'm sorry, I'm getting a little echo. um, and so it's just an arm of the social wellness groups out of the VA. And now what we do is we meet on Zoom because of the pandemic.
Okay.
We meet on Zoom every third Saturday of the month. And I'm hoping to get the clubhouse club started as well, where we meet, once a week to get together and talk about different topics with LGBT and the VA. That's my main focus is, how do you navigate the VA as an LGBT veteran?
Yes, and again, I think it's worthy of noting that in Clubhouse, we're creating space even in the Veterans Network Club. Right now, it is the biggest veteran club in Clubhouse. But being able to create space, right, for entrepreneurs, for mental health, for yoga, for non profits, fill in the blank. But even down to the point of financial literacy or having a space for the LGBTQ community to come together, or those are survivors of different traumas. Because the beautiful thing about this space is it's not just KD coming in here with others, it's also you have mental health professionals that are coming into these conversations. You have therapists, you have psychologists, you have, therapists who themselves are part of the community. So the conversation is not just a bunch of, folks just sitting down. No, you have the entirety of the community that is showing up into these meetings. And I think being able to put that out there is to focus and emphasize that it's a safe space. Come if you will, if you are ready. You don't have to talk. You can just sit, you can just be. It's okay to kind of go at it at your own pace and journey, because I think that's what we need more of. It's respecting people's boundaries, and when they're ready, knowing that the resources are out there. MVT is out there, the Military Veteran Trailblazers group in Facebook, and it's growing. And having the ability to have conversations in Clubhouse specific to the needs of this community, because I'm big on the fact that I see our veteran space as a community, and we have to be able to care and feed for all aspects of said community. And that includes those that are identifying as heterosexual or those that are identifying as part of the LGBTQ plus community. And the needs that they may have range from mental health to entrepreneurship to all different things. Because again, the segue here really what I appreciate about KD speaking up and standing up and kind of showing up here, it's there is a mental health component to KD's life, schizophrenia. There is also the fact that she's part of the LGBTQ community. However, she still has stood up, and despite what many would have just said, you know what, let me just go in a box and not speak up, or whatever case may be, you've stepped up to put a voice to the voiceless, to break stigmas, creating space, having groups, and being able to pay it forward because you're here today. Sadly, though, others need that connection, because we're not just here because of ourselves. We're here because someone reached out. KD, was in a place and someone kind of reached over it, right, and it was there for you when you needed them in some shape, fashion, or form. We've all have had those moments. So now that we have the means and the ability to communicate and have conversations like this, it extends our reach to be able to help more and be of service to more, so they know they're not alone. Because I think the worst feeling, and I would ask you, is that feeling when you're alone and you think that no one else is dealing with what you're dealing with and it's just you. How is that for you?
That's very isolating, um, and something that has driven me to find community. When I first got out of the service, I didn't know any other veterans. I didn't know, anybody in the LGBT community because, you know, the few times that I had a relationship while I was in the service, I always constantly had to, say that, I had a boyfriend instead of a girlfriend. Her name was, his name was Steven instead of Stephanie, that sort of thing. And so, it, not being able to connect with the community, that just drives me even more to seek out who I need, to find help from and to give help to. I often tell people that I'm like a train hub. I get you to where you need to go, and that's where I feel best,
Mm.
is finding ways to get people where they need to go, because honestly, somebody did that for me when I
Mm-hmm.
was going through my psychosis in 2016. I had a friend come up to me and say, "Hey, there's something strange going on with you. You need to get help." And it took me a couple of weeks before I went and got help, but that stuck in my head
Mm-hmm.
for a long time, and eventually I did go get help because of that person standing up and saying, "Hey, there's something going on. I
Mm-hmm.
think you need help. Please go get help."
I love how you put that you're a train hub, pretty much connecting the pieces and trying to help folks find their way, which is a great example to not saying KD has the answers. KD's just gone through many paths, which he can at least point you and say, maybe that might be your exit, or that might be the path, or the red line, or the blue line. You pick the line, but here are the options. Here's the train map. What
Right.
does that do for you, being able to be that for someone else? How does that make you
Oh,
feel?
that makes me feel great. It just it brings a smile on my face, and it makes me feel fulfilled, like I found my purpose. And for so long I drifted through life not knowing what my purpose was because I was out of the military. I wanted to do 20 years. I wanted to retire.
Mm-hmm.
And when that was not in the cards anymore, I didn't know what else I
You were
could do.
displaced.
Yes, yes.
there's
and
there's
and
something and there's something you said too, KD, which I don't want to get it too far away from, which was your inability to say what your relationships were. And I think some people may have heard what you said and not really hone in on it. But think about it for a second, right? When we were in service, you have the mandatory family days, you have the, mandatory fun moments, you have this ball, you have this get together, there's promotion ceremony, all the stuff that comes with service, right? It's a
Mhm.
very family oriented or intensive environment as you're serving, because of the fact that you may not be married but you're bringing whoever you're dating. It's kind of one of those things you do, right? Nobody wants to show up to the ball by themselves or the event or whatever it is that's happening. And for you to have to kind of live in a place where you had to say my boyfriend when really it was your girlfriend, or say Steve when it was really Stephanie, like you mentioned, right? How did that make you feel going through that? Because for many, they may still be going through that right now, regardless of the fact that things may go, because maybe they're just not ready. But can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think it's somber as it may be or hard to talk about at times, it's people's reality. Because if you can't acknowledge or talk about what that is, part of your journey and your healing has to work through that is to be where you're at today. But can you go back to that? How did that feel for all those years that you were in service, where you had to change your words and be very kind of general with my partner, right, or what have you? Talk to me a little bit about that.
That was very, disconcerting. Not disconcerting. It's very hard. It's
Yes.
very hard to experience because I wanted to be 100% military at
Yes.
the time, and to be told that that you're not invited because of who you are,
Mm-hmm.
that just did not sit well with me, and that was something that I was scared to get kicked out,
Mm-hmm.
basically, because I had heard stories previously, and I just was like, you know what, I'd rather just sit it out
Mm-hmm.
than try and, be who I am authentically,
Yes.
in front of my unit, or, whatever the case may have been. And it was very isolating, again, isolating, because I felt like I was an outcast within my own,
Mm-hmm.
unit and my own family,
So you
so
didn't speak up about this. In your mind, all of this is happening. To the outside world, KD has a boyfriend, and his name is Steve. Because you know,
yeah.
because and the reason I'm saying this because right, hey KD, we're at the motor pool. Whatever we do together, we work together. Hey, how's it going? How's it going? Hey, how's Steve doing? It's good. We're gonna go out tomorrow. All right, man. Have a good day. Work's over. I'm going about my business. I was here with you. I'm being nice and cordial. We're the typical talk, right? How's the weekend? And we're all exchanging stories or whatever. But the reality is that I still see you as just who you are, right? I see you as, right, in this moment, in the unit, as just KD, right? You have a boyfriend, all things are fine. One day we'll meet him. Some things always coming up. He's always at some stuff. Check, got it done.
Hmm.
In your mind, you are dealing with all of those things that you've heard. And if you say something, how I will see you now, right? I'm your friend. I'm your battle buddy. We're working together. And I don't know anything about these things at this point, let's say. And in your mind, there's a whole different reality happening. To beyond the disconnection and living that truth there, did you ever truly feel that you're part of the unit? Because again, the fear is I don't want to be ostracized from the unit, but I'm not in the unit fully. So even though optically, hey, KD's one of us, we're all here, let's go out and do whatever. In your heart, in your mind, did you ever really feel that you assimilated because of the fact that you were not able to be yourself?
No, I never felt like I was actually one of the brothers, the
Mm-hmm.
sisters. I felt like I was always standing apart from the rest of the family, because I was basically living a lie, and I knew that. And that's what they drill into your head. Service to your country, start from basic training, and to be granted like a secret clearance and everything like that. And that whole time you're thinking, I'm living a lie because I can't be myself,
Mm.
because of something like don't ask, don't tell. And it just didn't make sense, because why would you you know disregard me just simply because I prefer a woman instead of a man, and I see myself as non-binary instead of female. It just didn't make sense. I could do, I mean, I was marksmanship just as well as anybody else,
Mm-hmm.
rucking, all those things.
Mm-hmm.
The No problem. It's just you have a problem with my identity, and that's something that I just couldn't wrap my head around when I
Yes.
was in the service. So instead of, I mean, if I hadn't gotten hurt in my training accident, I think I would have eventually gotten out before 20 years anyways, because I just couldn't deal with the fact that I'm living a lie.
Yes.
And to the people that you're supposed to be closest to,
Mm-hmm.
you're lying to them every day, and that hurts your soul.
Yes.
You know.
And
Um,
that's it's powerful. It hurts your soul. It hurted your soul. The core, the essence of your being, beyond the bone and the marrow. Um, there's something that some would say, and I want to touch on it because it goes back to what you just said of it hurting your soul. There are some in service that I've known soldiers. I got out as a E7, led troops and so forth in the army, and we had service members that at exterior you just kind of could read between the lines. Never the statement was made, and events were always the partner couldn't make it. It was very kind of vague conversation. You know it was one of those kind of things where you kind of knew, but you respected the fact that that was not a conversation that was had, right? It was not on me to ask because even if that was after the fact, it's when that person is ready to speak. That said, many would say, "Well, KD, come on," and I'm just making this up now, but KD, I could have, I knew from the day I met you, who you fooling. That is not an answer because that does not take away from the fact that in your mind you are living a reality that even though I could see clear as day that KD, I see you exactly the way you identify. I've always seen it. Like, you're not fooling me. That doesn't make KD's reality better. And I'm mentioning that because oftentimes many folks would just dismiss and be like, how bad is it? Like, I know, you know that I know that I know that you know, so everything is well. And that's not the case because, again, all the things that people don't realize, the events, the family events, the unit events, the interaction, the being able to tell a true story of what happened last weekend. We've been together deployed for a year, and not once have you told me about the letter you got from the actual person you got it from. Not one weekend did you tell me how that weekend was, or that altercation, or that fight, or whatever. Because every weekend, right, or every month, let's say I came in and KD, let me tell you about my wife. Man, we have to go through this thing again, and you're sitting there hearing me pour my soul out about all the things I dealt with my wife. And in turn, how's your weekend? Yeah, me and Steve got into it. There's no Steve. And I don't care what people might say. The fact that you have to not, say your truth, that's something that people are carrying that hurts your soul to the word that you said. So I just wanted to introduce that because it's easy to dismiss someone's reality. And if you had to sit there and, regardless of what someone may see from the outside, never truly hear, KD talk about Stephanie and what happened. And let me tell you, she surprised me, man. And boy, it was my birthday. She done caught me, and it was an amazing surprise. And you guys were in on it. You guys, man, I can't stand y'all. None of those events are real for someone who lives that reality, right? You were in on my surprise party with my wife, and we all came together, and you surprised me in DP. Oh, you caught me. But that's never been KD's reality because Steve was always. So my point in saying that is to kind of bring to light what many folks may dismiss from the reality. Because again, I could see it. It doesn't matter what you see. Did you factor in what KD felt? Did you factor in her experience that 20 years might have been what she wanted to do, what he wanted to do, what they wanted to do, but that's not a reality because it's torture that you're living through, of not being able to be yourself truly, and in your mind, not really be part of the crew. To me, you're part of the crew, but you don't feel part of the crew, and that's not right. And I think those are the invisible wounds that many have carried outside of service, regardless of the fact of repealing Don't Ask, Don't Tell. You don't get that back. It's like when someone, for example, let's go to another extreme, is a survivor of military sexual trauma and they bring the perpetrator to justice. It doesn't take away from the years that that person held that trauma inside and all the events they missed. They missed parties. They missed moments that when I think back of my service, there's different highlights of things that I was a part of or events or whatever. Those events did not happen for many people. Promotion ceremonies where you weren't pinned by who you should have been pinned, right? And those are the moments I think that, many who are watching this missed out. I talked to someone, KD, and they said, you don't understand. I don't have awards for my service because of the trauma that I went through and how my service started to go downhill. And I went from a rising star to someone that got put out. All those things that today others have saying, hey, I got my hat proud, and I got my, fruit basket with all the awards, all the great stuff that, makes you feel like, it's not nothing, but we all still save it for a reason, right? Because at some point, maybe your grandkids may look at it and be like, oh, grandpa did something. That's not a reality for some people who are not able to truly excel and be themselves. So I want to just add that language and say that for those that maybe never spoke up to say those points, because it's what's missing in the conversation. And at least if you know that those things or those gaps in your service weren't there, it's okay to acknowledge, like Katie said, that it hurt your soul. It hurt your personality as who you were as an individual. And if today KD now presents, comes forward, let's say, rather, and goes to therapy or looks at different ways of getting support and help, that's the conversation. How are you feeling, KD? I feel that there are many gaps in my service. I don't feel like a veteran. What do you mean? You served. You don't understand. There was not a full service in my heart, in my mind, in my soul. So when you said that to me, that is the encompassing piece of me saying this, because for some, they need to hear this because hopefully it gives you the ability to go out there as you're going through your mental health process or you're getting care or you're speaking to put those words out there and give credence to the fact that no, those gaps, you can't get that time back, but we're acknowledging today, and making a better moment now. And I think that's what's amazing about what you're doing, KD, with MVT, what you're doing with some of the new initiatives that you are rolling out. So that's just one of the things I wanted to make sure that we put out there. What are your thoughts on some of that? Because again, I can respect and identify with that feeling, but I think it's just something that needs to be put out there.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's one thing to feel like you're part of something, but if you're not able to give it your all, then you're holding something back. And it's just it's heartbreaking at times. It's heartbreaking at times, but you know what I'm doing nowadays. It's fulfilling my heart. It's taking that broken heart and it's repairing it bit by bit,
Mm,
stitch by stitch.
mm,
Um, and that's basically what I want to do now.
yes.
I want to turn around and help the person behind me. You know, pull up to that mountaintop and come up there and be able to see the world from the mountains. You know, um, and so that's why I do military veteran trailblazers, and that's why I do my schizophrenia warrior support group.
Yes.
Um, I really can't say much more than that. It's just those are the two passions of my life right now, besides my family,
Yes.
and I
And I think what's powerful,
there are
KD,
any
is
words.
there's hope, right? I think that's really to the other part of the hopelessness and the detachment we talked about is that there is hope. And, again, I said it in the beginning and I'll say it again. One, I appreciate so much you holding the space with me because it's the conversation that doesn't happen. Sadly, many are not able to probably speak up or stand up, but you've done that. You've stood up. You've made a point to put a face, right, to the things that you now know to be your life to help others, to be that train hub, to be able to help someone else, understanding that, KD's dealt with schizophrenia. KD is part of the LGBTQ community, but she's not only that, she's trailblazing. She is setting a point to help out someone else who may not have maybe the gumption or the strength to be able to push forward. And they might be in a place of saying, I don't think that I'm going to make it through this. Because what I think we fail to realize is that, we're losing too many veterans a day. But we don't really realize that those 22 veterans are coming from all sides of our veteran community. And many of those in that daily count of 22 or so are also part of the LGBTQ community. Little did you know that that statistic, sadly, was KD. Could have been KD, you know? And I think having this conversation hopefully gives someone at least something to say, let me reach out. Reach out to KD, reach out to military veterans, trailblazers, have a conversation with the VA, find out what programs are available for you, because again, you're just not going to know unless we have these conversations. So, I really just wanted to commend that and honor you for just being vulnerable and being open, KD, to share not only the successes, right, of where you're at today, but the hurts and the pains that got you to today. And hopefully for someone else, they can see that, what, KD's, she's doing amazing things and she's standing up and she has a family and all these things are there, but there was a time where none of this was a reality for you and it was a dark place. And you worked your way through it, not because KD is stronger than the next person, but someone, like Katie said, was there. And because they were there, we can do that for others. So I just really, want to just identify and highlight that. What are some of the projects and sites and things that you have coming up? Because I know by the time that this airs, some of the things you have will be live. But can you tell us a little bit about some of the new initiatives and things you have planned for 2021?
Yes. So what I have planned is hopefully bringing both of my Facebook groups into the nonprofit sector. What I want to do is to bring the military veteran trailblazers into each state and overseas as well, and basically have a chapter in each state attached to the VA medical hospitals um, or medical centers that are out there. Um,
Mm.
and so bringing it nationally, bringing it overseas, globally, that's what I would like to do, because um, veterans live everywhere.
Yes.
They're all over the world right now, and you know a percentage of those are LGBT, plus, and so that's what I hope to do in 2021. The same with my schizophrenia warrior support group. We're a global group right now, and we're strong. We're probably the largest schizophrenia support group on Facebook right now, with about 9,000 members
Okay.
across the world. And so, what I would like to do is to, begin a nonprofit out of that as well, and let people with schizophrenia know that it's not just the homeless person talking to themselves down the street that you see. It's people like me that are recovered and stable and successful in life that have schizophrenia. You know, it affects 1% of the global population, but that's still a lot of people. That's still a lot of people, and not everybody, is down in the I'd say down in the dumps, talking to themselves, not medicated and hospitalized, but you know, we're out there, and we're thriving, and we're surviving, we're thriving, and if you happen to know somebody that lives with schizophrenia, please, reach out. That group is not only for schizophrenia people, but also people that know them as well. People that care for them. You know, um, and so I've got a great team. Bridget and Cheyenne are just the best, as well as Mindy and Ryan. And so we try and help each other out with support, and know that not always will you be alone in this. We're there for you. And a lot of people in the schizophrenia community live with suicidal ideations, and they may not even want to do it. They just want the pain to go away.
Mm.
They want the voices to stop. They want the hallucinations to go away. And so we're there every day talking to people, talking them down from wherever you know ideations they have, help getting them the help that they need, whether they're across the world in Afghanistan or India or any places like that, or whether they're next door to us.
Mm.
That's what we're trying to do.
And this is amazing. Again, Schizophrenia Warriors and Support Group on Facebook is the second group that you are part of, that you are running. Your personal group that you run, Military Veteran Trailblazers. One of the key points that you highlighted on both sides of the journeys of things that you've dealt with, it's the pain on both sides. So you've kind of had it from both angles, right? With schizophrenia and having to live pretty much a lie and not be truly yourself, and all that came from that. Back to the word that you use, with that hurt in your soul in so many ways. Add the psychology, the psychosis side of the house, and your mental health. It's a compound. So even the fact that you're here today is a testament to the community of someone being there, right? Your guardian angels being there, right? That sometimes we think it's going to be someone with wings, but it could be just that, that brother or that sister that just happens to step in, and with that caring voice, like they said to you, saying, "Hey, KD, something's a little off here." And again, the way you say those things, it has power, because you can be there for someone and you can hold them accountable, and you can come at it with love. And I think what you're doing, KD, and your organizations, and what you're able to are going to start doing with expanding that, I look forward to having more of these conversations. We've talked before, but this is the first conversation we're having here with all of our viewers. And really, I want to follow this conversation up because there's more work to be done. There's more things to unpack. But I think this is a good point where we could spend just one segment just talking about schizophrenia alone. We could have one conversation just about how you identify or what your preferences are. So it's a huge topic, and you literally have two massive things that you are involved in and efforts that you have. But I think being able to at least introduce these topics and begin the conversation, I think goes a long way to begin doing what should have happened a long, long time ago. And hopefully, someone that sees this or someone that needs this, share this with them because it's not about bringing attention to ourselves. It's about being able to expand the conversation with the community because the community that we have has a variety of individuals from all walks of life. The last question I have for you, KD, because sometimes we'll ask someone, what would you say to someone out there who may be struggling and all that, but what would you say to KD at the worst moments of KD's life where schizophrenia, identity, all the things you're dealing with have came to a head? That moment where literally it was like everything is compounded. Life has happened. Mental health is starting to deteriorate. It may have not been diagnosed yet, but all this stuff is happening. Knowing what you know today, what would you say? What would you do if you could walk back in time and talk to yourself off of a ledge or say something to yourself, whatever that may be?
I would say to myself, trust the process for one, and then two, listen to Linda, basically. Listen to Linda. She was the one that got me the help I needed. It just took me a little while, but yeah, it got me to where I needed eventually. But I think knowing what I know now and what I was going through at that time, it's just after the storm, there's always a rainbow. That's what got me through my 12 days in the psych ward. Was there was literally. Let me picture. Tell you the picture of this. In the psych ward, there's there's 2 beds and an open bathroom, and there's like a little thin, I don't know, plastic piece covering the bathroom. You don't even get a bathroom door. You just get this little thin plastic piece that is supposed to cover up, the most intimate places. And on mine specifically, it was a cloud and a rainbow, and that, like, staring at that 12 days straight, waking up every day and seeing that just reminded me that after every storm there is a rainbow, there is the sun, and it's beautiful because when you fly above the clouds, and even if you're going through storm clouds, you get above those clouds and it's still sunny out, so
I love that.
That's what keeps me going.
No, I love that, and I love the fact that it is literally. I smile because it's a literal and physical rainbow in your behalf, right? When you look at it, it's not just metaphorical, but really down to the flag. I think it's very fitting, but I love that because again, for those that may be enduring the storm, the sun's gonna come up, right? There is that ability for you to soar above that. But the perspective and the intention you bring into the conversation or how you face that will dictate that, right? Is the glass half empty or half full? Not diminishing anyone's journey. It's just saying the perspective of how you walk into this. I love how you said that. Yes, you could be flying through the clouds and it could be a thunderstorm, but you can go above it. You don't have to stay in it. You don't have to go under it. There is another alternative. It might not be an easy one because you're going to have to pull up a little bit and kind of go into that resistance, and it's going to get kind of shaky if we're going to use an aircraft analogy here. But the fact of the matter is, I would ask you, when you were pulling through those clouds and all that turbulence was happening and thunderstorms in your life, KD, and you started to kind of break through, and maybe the throttle and steering wheel kind of started to kind of ease up a little bit on the yoke there. Um, was it worth it when you saw that rainbow?
Yes. Yes. It was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life. Yes.
I appreciate
Yeah.
your time, KD. I appreciate your honesty. I think leaving it there, I would encourage and admonish and ask, regardless of where you may be, where you're watching this or hearing this, you grab that yoke and you pull just a little bit more, because if you pull above that cloud and that storm, that rainbow might be there waiting for you, and that sun, it's a sight to be. It's a sight. And go looking forward today at what Katie is able to do, both in her life and the different organizations and things that are standing up and what's happening in 2021. I think it just shows that that's part of what's in front. Yes, there'll be other clouds and other things that happens, but really you are a testament of hope for many out there. You may not see that or identify as that. We never want to be the person there, but I've always said that, you know, if not us, then who? And we don't take this
Right.
stand to have this conversation, then who would do that thing? So I really appreciate you, KD, for just holding the space with me again and sharing yourself with those that are watching this so that they can go ahead and hopefully just find a little bit of hope to hold on to the fact that, after everything kind of settles, regardless of how you're navigating the storm, that there is a rainbow, that there is a sun, that there is some hope, and things can begin to change around for the better. It may not make up for the past, but there is some way going forward. So I appreciate you so much for your time. Thank you.
Thank you, DP. I appreciate it.
Awesome. And we'll be back for another episode soon.